It's my pleasure to welcome Dr. Chris Holdorf and Rogers Hook to our virtual meeting this morning. They're here to teach us about the Global Water Center. After the presentation, there'll be time for you to ask questions, and then I'll wrap up the meeting with the news regarding our this year's Walk for Water. Before we get started, I'd like to introduce our presenters. Chris serves as Executive Director and is responsible for leading the development and operations of the Global Water Center. He holds several doctoral degrees, one of which is a doctorate in strategic leadership. Chris has also held senior executive positions at Arthur Andersen and Company, Contel Corp, GTE, and Southern Electric International. And I have to say, Chris loves to share his passion for the Global Water Center. Rogers is the Strategic Partnership Director for the Global Water Center. His role is to develop strong and long-lasting relationships with companies and partners like Burt Process, Grumfist, George Fisher, and many others who are all working together to end the global water crisis. Rogers holds a bachelor's degree in civil engineering and is a licensed professional engineer. He worked for Thomas & Hutton Engineering as a project manager for 15 years before he joined Water Mission and now the Global Water Center. Thank you, Chris and Rogers, for taking the time out of your busy schedules to be with us today, this morning. And now I'd like to turn the presentation over to Chris.
Sue, thank you, and good morning to everybody. It's great to be joining the Burt Process team this morning. And I really want to start by, Rogers and I want to commend the organization and the team. I was looking on your values and visions and noticed your passion to lead in global water and to be a strategic part of ending the global water crisis. And so really is wonderful to join you this morning and share with you about the Global Water Center. So I think with that, we'll just jump right in. Rogers, I'm assuming you can hear me and drive our presentation. You all good with that?
I sure can, Chris. I'm ready when you are.
Okay, so let's do this. Why don't we just start out with sort of an elevator pitch understanding of what the Global Water Center is. So this screen that you'll see, the Global Water Center often sounds like it's a place. And as you'll see in just a minute, there is a number of facilities that'll be part of the Global Water Center, but it's actually not a place as much as it is a collaborative platform. And so this is a good understanding of the Global Water Center, an introduction. It is a collaborative platform to create a movement of millions of people and to scale or multiply the impact of safe water organizations, corporate partners, just like Burt Process, foundations and other nonprofits to end water poverty by reaching 2.2 billion people. So in a minute, we're going to unpack the reality of the water crisis, which I know you're very familiar with, but oftentimes it doesn't stay on our radar. And as we do that, we want to look at the vision of the Global Water Center, and it allows us to really understand the real condition of the world that we live in. Our vision is very clearly stated, and yet it's not so easy to accomplish. So here's the vision. It is to bring the number of people affected by water poverty from 2.2 billion to 0. And I really want that figure, that number, that statistic to sink in, because it's actually far more than a statistic. 2.2 billion people. Can you imagine? That is 30% of the world's population lives in a condition of poverty that is actually quite preventable. And we know it's preventable because we all live in a community, in a society where water poverty has already been eradicated. And so we have this vision to collaboratively end water poverty. One of our founding board members said this about this vision, that it's audacious. And the word audacious, if you look at it, means that we're willing to risk a lot to see the goal accomplished. It's audacious, but he went on to say, it seems impossible, but it's necessary. And we contend that the only way that this vision is impossible is if we keep doing things the same way. But it is necessary. And the reason it's necessary, this next slide will demonstrate some of that, that the vision to end water poverty but our mission is to do this collaboratively, to build the capacity in order to eradicate water poverty. The reality of this is that no single organization can actually accomplish this vision alone. It requires a collection, a collaboration, a collective of organizations committing to a global strategy to do this. And why is it important? Because today, as this slide shows, and you probably already are aware, that 2,300 people statistically die every day from this preventable condition called water poverty, from lack of access to safe water and sanitation. And I want to just pause on that for a minute, because that's what drives us every day. And it's easy to let that get out of our heads for a few minutes, but 2,300 people a day, that's almost 1 million people a year are going to die from this condition, water poverty, that is preventable, that is curable, that we can do something about. And so as you think about that, that's devastating in and of itself. But the reality is also, as you travel the world, and many of you have no doubt seen this, that even above the death toll of 2,300 people a day, this condition takes a toll on human capital, and creates a scenario of human suffering that's unimaginable. Today, for example, there are children that won't be in school today around the world in the millions, because they're trekking their way in unsafe conditions to retrieve unsafe water to take it back to their homes. Rogers and I have been in the field plenty and seen the common experience of young children carrying so-called jerry cans, they're called. These are 8 gallons of, or 40 gallons, 8 gallons of water back to their homes, and making this journey every day in lieu of being out in the yard playing, out in the schools learning. And they live in this condition of sickness that, as we've gone from community to community, is assumed to be the normal condition of human living. And it's not, and it shouldn't be. And so people have value, we know that, and our goal is to see people move from this condition of poverty to a place of well-being, so that they can experience all that the potential of life, all that God has designed their life to be. And that's what motivates us every day. Oftentimes people ask us, there's so many people working in this area of safe water, why is it still a problem? What is the issue? And Rogers will unpack the next couple of slides to see these are the evidences of a problem, but what's really the challenge? Rogers, you want to unpack that?
Yeah, I'd love to. Chris, I think one stat that really illustrates the back part of what you were talking about that just impacts me greatly is that more than half the hospital beds in the world are occupied by people with waterborne illness. And I think the reason that stat resonates with me is because I can sort of wrap my head around that in my town, that I know how many hospital beds there are in my town, or at least how many hospitals, and there's not a person in one of those beds that has a waterborne illness. And if there is inside of the United States, we hear about it on the news. And so as you start to think about the impact that having lacking safe water has on 35% of the world's population, it's just tremendous. And so the question is why? Why is that the case when there are organizations out there working? And it starts at the very top with just lack of standards. It's not just maybe inconsistent standards, though that exists. It's sometimes just lack of standards. And just an example of that, me saying safe water, how I define safe water is very different how other organizations and even other governments out there define safe water. Their definition of safe water might be more improved, whereas I'm saying safe water meaning you and I are drinking that water. It has that same standard that we would expect here in the United States. Little collaboration, and that's not just little collaboration between like organizations that are out there doing the work. It's also little collaboration between governments, little collaboration between corporations and businesses that have a heart and have an invested interest in this space, there's just not a way or a platform to bring these people and these organizations together. Lack of monitoring and accountability. This is a huge one. And what's great about this, there's a solution to it. Technology allows us to do this and to do it well. But until we hold ourselves accountable, not only to the donors or the people that want to support us, but also to the people that we serve, we're not going to know without that level of accountability and the ability to monitor it if we had indeed moved the needle in a community where we put a water project. And so the ability to be able to do that, to know for perpetuity that that community is going to have safe water, is just an important part of what we do. Low awareness for the crisis. I was sharing with Sue and Bill before the start of this presentation that when I came to Water Mission now, some probably 8, 9, 10 years ago, I didn't even fully understand the global water crisis. I went to Water Mission and have transitioned to the Global Water Center knowing that I had a heart to help, but I just didn't understand the magnitude of the Global Water Center. And now, I'm sorry, the global water crisis. Now that I'm here and I'm starting to see it, and I've been there and I've touched it, I realize that safe water is foundational for everything else to be able to flourish. Schools, health centers, businesses, all of it fails or crumbles if they don't have the basics of safe water. And so just making sure that we can bring awareness to the world that there is a crisis that's really in our backyard. And then absence of global strategy. It goes back to the inconsistent standards. Until we can bring organizations and the world around this, we're going to continue to fail. So it's a massive problem, but the Global Water Center is the solution for that. So this is how it's going to do it. The Global Water Center is created to foster collaboration and to share resources. So the knowledge and the technology is out there. BERT processing, y'all have technology that exists to help treat water. There's not a known contaminant to man that we cannot take out of water and make it safe to drink. And so we want to take that knowledge, take those best practices, those resources, and we want to share that. And we want to help create the standards. And we'll unpack how we're going to do that a little bit for you, and give that to everybody out there, to governments, to the UN, to other aid organizations like Water Mission that is an implementer. The Global Water Center is going to be that platform to help equip those organizations.
Yeah, thanks, Rogers. I want to, before we really dive into then sharing a bit more detail around the Global Water Center, I really want us together to realize. So 2 years ago, the statistic was 2.1 billion people. There is a lot of work going on. There's a lot of good work going on by many organizations. There's a lot of activity that's happening that's actually not contributing to sustainable solutions, but there is good work going on. And yet, in light of that good work, we've gone from 2.1 billion people suffering in water poverty to 2.2 billion people. So what we can see is we're not moving the needle in the right direction. Actually, the trajectory of a global issue is going in the wrong direction. So this is the time. We have the technology, we have the resources, and there is a hunger and a demand within the safe water industry, within corporate partners like BERT Process and others around the world who are coming alongside and saying, this is the time, this is the platform, let's do something strategic that's world changing. We have that opportunity to do that. So this has never been done before, but we think there's a credible way to actually create this platform. So the Global Water Center, that's what it is. It's a platform. It's interesting. We live in a platform world today. So many of us, I love to shop brick and mortar. I love to shop at the local shops here in Charleston, South Carolina. But actually, I do a lot of my buying on a platform called Amazon. We live in a world today where technology allows many organizations to come together, serve customers seamlessly, and do far more than anybody could do on their own. That essentially is the Global Water Center for safe water. The Global Water Center has at its core two primary components or dimensions. On the one hand, we refer to the resource center, and you see in this pyramid, the resource center is the arrow point within the industry to scale effectiveness, to create a consensus around best practices, around a global success framework, and then to, through training, equipping, support services, to enable people up to those standards, and then provide the platform, as Rogers was talking about, to have the worldwide global monitoring platform to see how we're doing and to strategically react to that. So that's the resource center. That is, its name describes it. It's the platform for resourcing other organizations through subject matter experts in the field of safe water, corporate partners as well as NGOs. The Discovery Center is the public-facing aspect of the Global Water Center, which allows us to engage millions of people, to create a movement of millions of people, and also principally to raise the capital that's going to be necessary to change the world and eradicate water poverty. So this pyramid, I hope, gives you a bit of a clarity around the two dimensions of the Global Water Center. So what we want to do next, though, is unpack for you the progress toward each of those dimensions, and starting with the Discovery Center and where that's going, what it is and where it's going. So I think the next slide will show us that. The Discovery Center, you can go ahead to the next slide. So the Discovery Center is a series of interactive learning experiences. It's showcasing all the aspects of water. It is sort of the museum of water, telling the story of water, but also telling the story of people and water. And so some of the renderings that you see here, the Discovery Center essentially will take people through a journey of water, the science of water, water and our world, the fact that without water, there's no life, but with water, there is life. It takes you through an understanding of water and our world, our history, our culture, water and industry. Water is, and you folks know this, water is part of every aspect of industry and every aspect of our lives. But also the Discovery Center will walk people through an understanding of then why does water poverty exist? And most importantly, how do we resolve it? And how can you be a part of it? So as we move on, you'll see some of these renderings. One of the things that will be important for us is through the use of technology and to take people to an actual experience, to be able to interact with the real people that have gone from water poverty to well-being. So Rogers, let's go and look at how do we launch the Discovery Center? Well, there will be a place in Charleston, South Carolina. You'll see that eventually. That'll be the home for Global Water Center, but also the Discovery Center. But we're actually launching the Discovery Center in the first quarter of next year with a mobile Discovery Center strategy. And this is 3 tractor trailers that you'll see in just a minute that take these 3 story themes and take people into an experiential, hands-on understanding of water and water poverty. Water is life, water and people, safe water for everyone. Let me show you what that's going to look like. So we've just completed 10 weeks of conceptual design. We're now moving into the actual final designs and fabrication. And what you're seeing here is you're seeing a footprint that will travel to about 20 venues a year. And that footprint is anchored by the 3 boxes in the back, in the background, which is actually 3 tractor trailers that expand much like an RV does. And inside those tractor trailers is a quite amazing experience. And then you see the outdoor pavilions and things that we'll show you. Let's show a little bit more of the detail of this. It'll give you an understanding of the Discovery Center. Here's an overview. It's a complicated schematic, but what you're seeing as people enter on the right-hand side of this, it'll be very interesting. This is being designed now as a COVID safe environment and experience. So as people come in, they're giving what's called an RF, a radio frequency ID bracelet. Many of you may be familiar, and it allows every participant in this exhibit to begin to personally interact with the experiences, to download and curate the aspects of the experiences that really resonate with them. But it also gives us a chance to start building a relationship with people and bringing them into this movement of millions of people to eradicate safe water. It certainly also gives us the opportunity then to have the capacity to develop the capital, the financial capital that's needed to see this happen. So what you're seeing in this diagram is they come in, they have this 30-second registration, and then they have the ability to curate and activate the experiences without even touching anything. So you see 3 trailers here in the bottom. Trailer 1, the experiences will be water and life. Trailer 2 over on the left side, water and people. And trailer 3 again is how do we eradicate water poverty and how can you have a part in this? In the middle, what you see are the so-called water activity pavilions, hands-on, fun, but it's still learning. And so Rogers, let's just go through a couple of the more detailed images. This is an example of what one of these trailers can look like. This is not one of the ones that we're purchasing, but it's one that is one of our partners has done. Another great view of how that 53-foot trailer expands. The inside, this is perhaps a little underwhelming from what we're developing, but it does give you a good view and feel of what an inside of a trailer, 1,000 square feet, conditioned. We're actually conditioning it to be reflective of the need to make sure this is a COVID safe environment through the filtering of the air and also the use of UV lighting and then the touchless activation of these experiences. We can go on and show you a little bit of the trailers, and I'll just really go quickly through here. Trailer 1 again, water and life. Look at the next slide, and what you'll see is the walls of these trailers. These are video walls. They're radar activated. They're sense activated. And as you approach these walls, they unpack the story and take you into the story of water. In the middle is a spherical globe screen that allows people around that screen to play what if the climate changes, what happens, how does our world exist, what are the conditions that allow water to even exist, and how does water have an impact in our world. So it'll be quite fun, it'll be quite educational, but it'll also be inspirational. We'll just move through, give you a taste of these trailers. The second trailer is water and people. Look at, here, the center attraction of that is this large manifold pump. Moving water is a huge aspect of getting safe water to people anywhere in the world. And so we'll let people understand, how do we move water? How do we treat water? Why does water poverty exist? Again, the walls around this and the venues within each of these trailers are very interactive for people to learn. And then the third trailer takes you to the real people who have experienced water poverty and now well-being, but it also gives you a very concrete understanding of the various dimensions of how do we actually treat contaminated water? How do we solve the problem of unsafe water? And so by the time you leave the third trailer, you're hopefully being pulled into how you can have a part of this. You see in the infields, these water pavilions. Rogers, you can just flip through these and just give us a taste of, we want it to be fun and educational for children and academics, and all things water in the middle here, solar power, moving water, the technology that goes into it, even sanitation. And you know what? It's hard to make sanitation a fun topic, but without addressing sanitation, we really don't resolve and eradicate water poverty. We have opportunity for our corporate sponsors, certainly Burt Process and others, not so much to feature their products as much as to tell the story of why they care about human well-being. And so that'll be a big part of this as well. We can move on, Rogers. The Resource Center, so you've just seen the Discovery Center. The Discovery Center will eventually have a home in Charleston, but we'll long-term, this is not a stopgap. We plan to have the Mobile Discovery Center launched Q1 of next year, and that'll be an ongoing part of our opportunity to engage corporations, but millions of people. The Resource Center is the other dimension, and that is how we work inside the safe water community to create a global success framework of standards and best practices, and then train people up to those standards and best practices. And here what I'd love to do is sometimes people's eyes glaze over when we talk about standards. Now, I think at Burt Process, you folks embrace the idea of standards and excellence, and you understand why that matters. But I think I'm going to ask Rogers to share a couple of images. I think we have these here to just demonstrate the need for consensus and also training people up to be able to execute safe water systems and projects with excellence. Do we have those, Rogers?
Yeah, Chris, we certainly do. And even before I leave this slide, I think Chris and I have been to this community that you're seeing. It's Zeze in Tanzania. And what you're seeing even in this slide is starting to demonstrate standards. It's starting to demonstrate quality. And when we talk about standards, we talk about sustainability. And I'm just going to flag this one device right here. That is a remote monitoring device that we can explain a little bit more in greater detail, but you just see these components coming together in this project. So I'm just going to give you a couple of pictures that sort of demonstrate things that we found in the field. And we do this, and Chris said this earlier, and I can't agree enough. We do this not to badmouth other organizations. That is not our goal at all. In fact, we need them. We need other organizations. What we're trying to demonstrate is just the lack of standards, and then why we see failure of projects and why we don't see that number going down, but rather going up. And so we need not only more organizations, but we need the organizations that are out there doing this, doing it well. And so what you see are two pictures of two different fences, and both in the same community. In fact, one of the major funders of this organization sent these pictures to us. And what you see is, yes, two pictures of fences, but what you're really looking at is the difference between sustainability and failure. This is in that same camp. This was now what you're seeing, obviously sustainability and versus failure, but now you're looking at something that's very dangerous. It very likely could kill somebody on the left-hand side. And one of the things that one of our colleagues, Chris and our colleagues pointed out, is oftentimes it's not the lack of knowledge on how to do this in the countries, it's this belief that it just cannot be done. And so we have to work beyond just creating the standards, but making sure that we can show, we have. Water Mission, who has birthed the Global Water Center, has proven that this work can be done. And that's just an important part of what we do.
And Rogers, I would add to that, if you want to go back to that slide, what you're seeing there, by the way, is what happens on the left-hand side when there's no standards and sense of excellence. And on the right-hand side, you're actually seeing what replaced that, which is the same quality that you would have here in the US that is now in Tanzania. And the reason why is there's this sense that it just can't be done. But really what's being said there is that we're willing to live with a sense of inequality that, quite frankly, those of us at the Global Water Center are unwilling to accept. That people have value no matter where they are. And if what is on the right-hand side is necessary for safety, but also sustainability, then everybody in the world deserves that. And we're unwilling to accept that it just can't be done. Yeah, go ahead, Roger.
Yeah, that's good, Chris. Thank you. This last picture, again, Chris and I were here. This is in Nyarugusu, a refugee camp in Tanzania. Currently has about 130,000 people living there. When this picture was taken, it was over 200,000 people living in this camp. And what you're seeing is the raw water source. We looked, we saw this river, stood next to it, and you just see how dirty that water is. One thing to remember too, it's not just dirty because of the turbidity floating out there, but when you have 200,000 people living next to a river and they have no access to sanitation, the amount of fecal contamination in this river is extraordinarily high. You have a pump, so using some of the same technology we would use, but it's going straight into a tanker truck that says clean water. And so where we saw before two fences, and I think it shows the difference between sustainability and non-sustainability, but just construction. The next one we saw what could be very, very dangerous. Now we're seeing something that most definitely will kill. And as y'all know at Burke Process, when we say something's clean on the other side of a tap, when we say clean water, we have an ethical responsibility to make sure that it is. Ask Flint, Michigan. And so making sure that those kind of standards are brought up and communicated and made available to everybody. And this is not difficult technology. It's filtration and disinfection. We've been doing it in the US for a long time. So just being able to share that technology is an important part of what the Global Water Center is going to do.
Great. So for sake of time, let me just pull this together then. Here we are in the Resource Center. We've talked about the Discovery Center. Now we're talking about this is why this is important, because for us to eradicate water poverty, we have to create critical mass that begins with an understanding of what are the best practices, what are the standards that the industry is willing to accept, that we know leads to sustainable solutions. From there, the platform, the Global Water Center platform, then through subject matter experts, corporate and nonprofits, lifts people to those standards of training, or through training, lifts people up to those standards by offering an open source platform for training, for equipping, meaning to bring the ability to acquire the necessary equipment to have quality projects, and to come alongside those that don't yet know how to do it or have aspects of projects that they are not competent in, and provide the supporting services directly to it. This is not theory. This is already happening. The Global Water Center now is formalizing this process and scaling it so that we can actually grow the number of safe water organizations and the effectiveness of those. And so we'll just close with these next slides, which I think will give us a chance to have Q&A. We know there's a process. This is not a mystery. Today, the world is struggling, and we're seeing what happens when the world comes together to address an issue that, quite frankly, we don't yet know how to solve, COVID-19. And we're seeing trillions of dollars come together to do something that's necessary, but we yet don't know how to solve it. Here is a condition: more people will die this year from unsafe, contaminated water than they will COVID-19. That's not to diminish the need to address COVID-19, but it is a statement that says we need to bring this issue to the forefront because we actually know how to resolve unsafe water. And it's the kinds of things that you all are familiar with: assessing, design standards, excellence in implementation. Those are kind of the pumps and pipes of it. But the real issue often is in the community development. Without community buy-in and a community-based sustainable plan, you cannot have sustainable solutions. And so the Global Water Center creates this platform for the full cycle of eradicating water poverty through these methods. And I think we'll just close with this time. Rogers, you can skip to the next. Yeah, long term, the Global Water Center does have a home base that is a place of innovation, is a place of research, it's a place of education. There will be a home for the Discovery Center, but it's also a co-located place with Water Mission, which is, I know, an organization very familiar to you, and it's our founding charity as well. And so this shows you that the home location eventually will bring the general public into a place where real research is going on, real collaboration. And the last slide I want you to see is where we have created this platform that is demonstrating and monitoring a global strategy, which is already underway, as well as a global monitoring platform that is open source, that safe water organizations can access anywhere they are, as long as they're living up to the standards that we're setting collaboratively together. So that's the Global Water Center, and love to answer questions and chat more about it.
Great. Thank you both very much. That was fantastic, really enlightening, and hopefully it helps us all. Every time I hear you speak, I learn something new. So hopefully we've all learned something this morning. At this time, we'd like to open up, and feel free to unmute yourself if you have a question, and go ahead.
So I have a question. My question is, where will the mobile museum travel to?
That's a really great question today. And I didn't catch the name of the person asking.
Sorry, this is Tracy.
Hi, Tracy. Thanks. So today, as we're already now just starting the fabrication, we're also now starting to schedule. I'll give you the types of venues. We're looking at about 20 venues a year, and the range of locations is quite interesting. So for example, one of our partners, somebody that is obviously probably familiar to you, Kohler Industries. Kohler, you know Kohler because they sell things for your kitchen and your bath. Kohler is very much involved in the safe water movement as well. Kohler, as a company, is a sponsor of a golf tournament called the Ryder Cup. The Ryder Cup has been delayed because of COVID-19 to next year. This is, and Kohler has asked us to have the Mobile Discovery Center present at the Ryder Cup to help the Ryder Cup have a theme of more than just golf, more than just sports, but also of world change. So that's an example. Other examples, we're scheduling now to have the Mobile Discovery Center at the largest state fair in the country, the Texas State Fair. And you'd think that seems like an odd audience, but actually it's not, because the Texas State Fair has millions of people over the course of 3 weeks. And it allows us to expose multiples of what we normally could do. There'll be other venues. For example, Redeemer Church in New York City does a global world conference, and it attracts quite a lot of people to New York City. And the Mobile Discovery Center will have a presence, for example, in that type of venue. I could go on with those types of venues, but it's largely where there's already a event that is drawing people, and the notion of safe water fits into the purpose or the ethos, or can be a part of that event. So hopefully that helps you to understand the kinds of venues. And I would just say there are also room for corporate partners. We know that our corporate partners oftentimes will do events that draws a lot of people, and we want to be able to support that as well.
Awesome, thank you. I actually have another question if no one else does. So I heard Rogers mention Flint, Michigan, and since that's obviously in the United States, I was thinking, does the Global Water Center, do you guys help places like Flint, Michigan, or will you be helping Flint, Michigan?
That's an interesting dilemma. The issue in Flint, Michigan is not one of lack of awareness or of an inability, actually, and you can get sideways quickly here, but it's probably, no matter, at somewhere it's a systemic breakdown of accountability, right? So there will be opportunities for the community to draw upon the resources of the Global Water Center. But to be quite frank, our real arrow point is in the areas and in the communities where safe water simply doesn't exist, and there's systemic water poverty. The issue that you're bringing up is really one of perhaps execution and accountability, and a lack of foresight to have safe water for a community. So I don't know the full answer to that, but my sense is that's not our primary audience and focus, if that makes sense to you.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. Thank you for clearing that up for me.
Chris, and I might add just one thought when we think about the U.S. There are organizations that do work inside the United States where those needs exist. For example, Samaritan's Purse and Water Mission are both working in the Navajo Nation right now. COVID has impacted that, but they also lack safe water. And so when you think about the Global Water Center becomes a platform where those organizations are pulling resources from to be able to do best in class technologies, and doing work in the United States is very different than doing work in, say, Tanzania. Just because we have an EPA, we have standards here and permitting processes that have to be followed that don't exist in other organizations. I'm sorry, other countries, but there is work going on inside the United States, just very seldom.
Hello there. This Can anybody hear me? This is Bill Simmons.
Hi, Bill.
Hi, friends. I'm a mechanical engineer, a general engineer with Burt Process Company. I'm familiar with Kohler as a purveyor of electrical backup generators that have automatic start features that can be supplied with numerous different fuels, operate 50, 60 hertz. But I see some points on your map. The question about it is that those points on the map, are those places where you've targeted need, or are those places where you have outreach?
Well, that's a great question, Bill. That image that we're looking at right now, to be very transparent, is really simply our rendering and an illustration of the monitoring that will happen. Today, we are engaged with the safe water community to begin to develop a number of things. One is a global success framework across the spectrum of different approaches, what actually works, and to develop that consensus. The other is an understanding of where the 2.2 billion people actually are and who's doing work in those locations. And then thirdly, I would say, what are the gaps in the industry in terms of competency? So to be honest, to be very transparent, the illustration you're seeing there is simply a rendering, but it does demonstrate and illustrate what you're asking about. Unfortunately, today, that type of strategic monitoring and coalescence doesn't exist, but we've already begun the process, and there is a hunger to come together and see somebody take the lead and catalyze this opportunity for that type of platform. The other thing that you mentioned, and I thought you might be bringing up, is, you know, energy is a big part of solving water poverty, and energy grids are not reliable around the world. What's very, very interesting, you may know, is Water Mission and others. We've perfected solar power and its use in pumping systems that we can actually get safe water systems anywhere in the world. And we can overcome the inconsistencies in energy grids through solar power and other technologies that's actually quite successful. So anyway, I thought part of your question was going to go there. It didn't, but I wanted to use the opportunity to just acknowledge that it's not easy, but there really is not a barrier technologically that we can't yet overcome. The people side, that's where the challenge is.
Well, thank you for that answer. My reach tries not to overextend my grasp. Yet, I'm familiar with I'm associated with the Solar Energy Association of Connecticut, and we've been, they're a 45-year-old organization that I'm on the board, but they do have enough technology with solar installations, rectifiers, and even DC systems are popular these days. It might be better to invert the stuff, but the electrical stuff. But the thing is, the local people can be trusted. The cost of these installations is high. Yeah, and they are modern. Nowadays, in the electrical power industry, where I came from, they're designing for 15-year life expectancies, and they're not bonding for 30. The bonding for 30 and life expectancy of 15 has always been a bad economic model, or it's been a troublesome economic model. So the scale of the projects needs to be, I think, limited to a 10-year life expectancy and 10-year bonding. But I don't know. There's an issue with that, and I'm going to leave it with that. Not make too much of a question or issue. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill.
Okay. Thank you, Bill. So we are a little bit past our time at this point. So what I'd like to say is anyone who needs to go, certainly we understand if you need to drop off. Chris and Rogers, if you have the time, we'd love to have you stay on until the questions come, you know, we get through all of them. And before people drop off, I just want to mention that shortly the question may be going through your heads that what can we do? What can I do as an individual? So stay tuned and keep an eye open for emails from myself and Tracy, who are heading up the Walk for Water this year. It will be on October 17th. We are ready to launch that. So later today, you'll see an email from us, and that's what you can do to participate in that and help raise funds and awareness for not only Water Mission, but the Global Water Center as well. So thank you. If you do need to drop off, we understand. Thank you for joining us, and I'll turn it back over to the next question.
I have a question. Sorry, Bill, you know who I am. With the water poverty being so widely spread globally, how are the projects prioritized to bring the clean water systems to those places in need?
Right. So right now, Bill, the answer may surprise you, but it's very direct and true. It's funding. Right now, organizations respond to where they can enlist funding. And so oftentimes foundations, governmental agencies, quasi-governmental agencies, and corporate partners have an interest in a location. And that, quite frankly, drives what happens and where it happens. And there's nothing necessarily wrong with that, but it obviously, as you can imagine, doesn't lead to a global strategy then. And so we think part of the Global Water Center opportunity is that we have the ability to attract capital, financial capital, and then use that capital to influence safe water organizations in a positive way to be a part of a strategic effort to make sure that everybody's not, the way I put it, let's don't chase the soccer ball. So I have this image of 7-year-olds playing soccer and maybe 5-year-olds playing soccer. And typically what happens is, 7 of them are chasing the ball everywhere around the field. Well, that's not dissimilar to what happens in the safe water industry as well. So the answer to your question is we do think we can shift behavior by allowing capital to have its influence, but using it more strategically than what happens today.
Okay, thank you.
If I may, I actually have something that I'd like you to speak to, if you would, which I think might tag onto the question that Bill just asked. So can one of you explain what is Charity Navigator and how it influences donors and donors' comfort in contributing to whether it be Water Mission or the Global Water Center?
Sure. Charity Navigator is a wonderful sort of organization of best practice or standard for nonprofit organizations. So Charity Navigator looks largely at financial results, management, leadership, other metrics to assign various levels of affirmation so that largely the donor community can look at an organization and see what its Charity Navigator rating is. And I think it's 4 stars is the best. I may be wrong about that, but it's something like that. So Water Mission is a longtime best in class organization for years with Charity Navigator. The Global Water Center has just been created legally in March of this year, but obviously will strive toward that. The thing that's interesting, Sue, is Charity Navigator, it has limitations in a true understanding of the organization's effectiveness and a project's effectiveness. And it's not a limit, it's not a criticism of Charity Navigator, it's not designed to have that full look through. So we embrace Charity Navigator and we embrace what it does. The Global Water Center has an additional dimension that people in the safe water industry are really hungry for, and that is that we would be able to provide the Global Water Center stamp of good housekeeping, if you will, that these organizations are meeting the standards and employing the types of practices that actually lead to sustainability. Now, here's the key. The monitoring system and the monitoring platform becomes a feedback of credibility or lack of credibility, but a feedback of credibility back to funders. Today, you and I would never invest our money with wealth advisors if you didn't have feedback, right? You can't even imagine that scenario. But in the nonprofit world, people fund things by the millions, and there's not really a data-driven feedback loop. The Global Water Center will provide not only for donors and funders, but that's a big part of it, but it'll also provide back to the organizations what's working and what's not working, even to the point of predictive analytics. How do we know and get ahead of when a system needs maintenance? Well, you can do those types of things with the technology that exists today.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Hey, Sue, this is Steve. I just wanted to thank you, first of all, for putting this together. And thank you, Chris and Rogers. This is exactly what I had hoped we'd accomplish. Giving the BERT process an idea of how the resource center might be a platform for us to help you out and help out the global water situation. You may have mentioned it. When does the resource center open, if it hasn't already? And second part to that is, will it be a technology center? Will there actually be research and work being done there, or will it just be will it be a platform for others to collaborate?
Right. Steve, thanks for having us. It's really great. We look forward to the chance when we're past this COVID-19 where we can come and visit personally, but thanks for having us. The Resource Center is both ands. So it's already begun in terms of its operating in a growing formal way. And that is to say, the activity around training, offering equipping services. That is to say, we come alongside organizations already today and say, if this is the system you're trying to do, we can help you acquire the equipment and also evaluate it. And then the design work that's going on, that's happening already today in a growing way, but it's actually happening already today. The efforts, though, to coalesce around standards is a new effort that has begun. We just convened a workshop in June of the 13 probably most influential safe water organizations in the US that spent 3 hours with us already working toward this framework. So that platform, as you noted, is already begun today. There is a lot of work now to formalize it into this seamless sort of Amazon.com of safe water. Having said that, the facility that I showed in the presentation that we showed does then become also an element of location, of research, of innovation, of academics. So one of the things that's interesting is we're drawing some of the leading academics and universities into this, and foundations, the Hilton Foundation, for example. And so the home base in Charleston, the facility, will also be a place of in-person collaboration and development. We don't want to wait until we have a brick and mortar home, because there's much that can be done and will always be done on the platform, which is largely in the cloud.
Great, thank you. And I just finished by saying I think we accomplished what we want by the questions that were asked. I think people understand a lot better now what you're doing and how BERT process can be a part of that. So thank you.
Great. Thank you, Steve. I think on that note, we will wrap up. If there are other burning questions, I'm here. Send them to me, everyone. I'll connect you. If I don't know the answer, we'll find it out or connect you with Chris and Rogers. And again, I just appreciate all the folks who took the time this morning to listen in, to learn, and to understand how, as BERT process, we can uphold our corporate goal of finding a way to lead in the global water initiative. And again, thank you, Rogers and Chris, for being with us this morning.
Thanks for having us.
Thank y'all. Y'all encourage us tremendously, so we appreciate it.
Very much. Have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Take care now.